Dr. Aaron Neufield, graduated in what year?
2015.
And opened a practice when?
Right about a year after.
And there are, I'm sure, certain challenges that you faced as a new
Quite a few.
graduate, just managing the practice in general. Why don't you talk a little bit about maybe some of the most challenging things about managing and running a practice, particularly as a new graduate?
Yeah, definitely. So going into owning a practice, it was an established practice. It had been around since 1969. And a lot of the staff had been on for over 20 years. And so that was a big factor in jumping in, as you got this new guy just out of school. How do we trust this guy? How do we work under this guy? We're not sure about him.
Yeah, I remember when I first started out, I was an associate, and I went into the practice, and I had a lot of issues just in general, kind of earning the respect and trust of a lot of the staff members, because I was this young OD, and even though I wasn't even the boss, it wasn't even my practice, a lot of times it was kind of like, well, who's this guy? He's new and he's young.
Yeah.
So you kind of probably experienced a lot of that too, but even more so because you were their boss,
Yeah.
right? So
Yeah.
what were some of those challenges, and how did you kind of go into the practice and sort of mark your authority, so to speak? Did you take a specific approach?
Yeah, so the approach I took was, the first thing I did was found some mentors in our society, guys that had been in a similar situation that I had been, and I asked them, how did you go into this? What were some of your successes, some of your failures? And from what I gathered, it was kind of a teeter-totter. You didn't want to go in as the authoritarian figure, because that would push people away, but at the same time, you didn't want to be, a completely laid-back individual, so it's kind of a good balance of the two. You want to go in, show your authority, show that you know your clinical skills, show that you know how to run the place, but at the same time, you want to show a little bit of vulnerability as well. You want to show them that you're human, that they can interact with you, that they can trust you. Trust is the biggest part of running an office.
Did the previous owner kind of stay on for a period of time to help you with that transition, or did you have to just you took it over and then it was up to you?
Yeah, so the initial contract that the original owner had was to stay on for 3 years with me, part-time, to kind of, guide me through and get me going on my way. What happened was, after about a year, he came down with cancer, had to retire. So I was kind of just thrown into the trenches.
Thrown to the wolves,
yeah.
right?
Yeah, which was, it was bad and it was good. It was kind of a blessing in disguise because I had to learn on the fly. And there was a lot of things I probably wouldn't have picked up if he was still on, but at the same time, it would have been nice to have that guidance.
So what were some of the main things that you had to do first when you took over the practice in terms of practice management? Always on the same topic, right? So, just in terms of understanding metrics, KPIs, number one, how did you go about learning those things? Mm-hmm. And then number two, what are some of those KPIs or metrics that kind of were very important to you when you first got started?
Yeah. So in order to learn about KPIs and metrics, picked up a bunch of business books. Unfortunately, business not something that's really talked about in optometry school. So that was all new to me. Luckily, I had a lot of individuals that were in finance around me, so they kind of helped me out, helped guide me in that path. And really the main thing was getting the finances on track. The practice had been around for a while, had a retiring doc that, was kind of phasing himself out, so he wasn't as concerned with the finances, and that was the big thing, was getting us on track. Had to look at costs, different things like that, start cutting things out, start adding things on, start making the practice a little more modern. So,
did you go and start doing kind of your own reporting, whether that was kind of like printing reports, putting them in Excel, or were you using maybe your EHR? Were there any tools that you were using to kind of help you?
Yeah, the EHR was huge. So in our practice, we use Crystal PM, and that came on right about when I took over. And so we were definitely using every possible report we could get off of that. And really, even tracking day sheets, that was something that was foreign to the practice. It was week, month sheets, that's what they were tracking, but I wanted to see how we were performing every day. And was looking at trends year by year, seeing what times of the year we were doing better, doing worse, and seeing what kind of patients were giving us more, what patients were giving us less. And marketing, different things that worked for marketing, different things that didn't.
Yeah, we can definitely talk about marketing too, but one thing I'm particularly interested in is, for example, so you have a good snapshot of your practice, right? You're running reports, you're starting to look at numbers, starting to draw conclusions. How do you communicate that to your staff? Are you having regular staff meetings? What did that interaction look like, and how do you kind of sit down with your staff and say, well, you know what, there are particular goals now that we want to meet, and these are those goals. Maybe the previous owner was doing some of that, maybe they're accustomed to it, maybe not.
So actually, yeah, that's a funny story about that. So the previous owner did not believe in meetings. So never had a staff meeting in the 20 years that he was doing it. I went to a few classes and they're like, no, you need to have staff meetings, that's important. And so when I first started, I kind of overmet. We were doing one a week. Everyone's like, why are we doing this? Why are we wasting our time doing this? And then I kind of scaled it back a little bit. We did one every 2 to 3 weeks when it was important to do them. And we were going over numbers, different things like that. I started implementing bonus structures and production bonuses as well. And was really showing them the big picture that, hey, like, these numbers, this is what makes us run. And this is why you're getting paid to be here, is because these numbers are working. And kind of having that synergy between the numbers and the staff production, that really helped out. That really got us on the right track.
Yeah, I really like talking about staff just because they can be your biggest ally, really, when it comes to running your practice. They're so important, and sometimes it's difficult. You can't really operate without them, right? You need their full support, and you need their buy-in. So another thing that I want to ask you is whenever you took over, did you lose any staff? Did they kind of say, well, you know what, the owner's leaving, I don't really want to work for you, so to speak? Did you have any issues with that?
Yeah, we did lose a couple staff members, and 2 of the staff members that were actually on were the wife of the previous owner and the wife of the previous owner. When you have a doctor and their spouse is working with them, they get comfortable. They do certain things that a normal staff member wouldn't do, and then they're still comfortable with that even though the doctor has left and there's someone else that owns the practice. And so that creates a little bit of a rift. And so ultimately it was for the best that both of them left, and we brought in new staff members that were young, that were completely foreign to the practice, so that definitely helped us out.
Yeah, as a new practice owner too, I'm sure that you might have had specific ideas, so to speak. Maybe you wanted to change the branding, maybe you want to change the culture of the practice. Did you change any of those things, and how did you kind of go about that, whether that was kind of just a gradual change over time, maybe it was incremental, and what kind of reaction did you get, not just from staff? I know I've been talking a lot about staff. What did the patients think when you started becoming the new owner, so to speak?
Yeah, definitely. When I jumped in, definitely changed the branding. I'm really big on branding. I think branding really has a powerful effect. I mean, you look at Apple, all these different companies, and so the big thing was to put our logo on everything. And so we got it colorized, we put it on everything we did so it would be recognizable. We didn't have that before, we didn't even have a logo. And so that definitely helped out with patient recognition. And then the next thing was establishing a culture that everyone could relate to. And so I did write a handbook, read the E-Myth, and kind of drank the Kool-Aid out of that. And so we wrote a 100-page handbook, had our mission statement, and that was the big
100
thing.
pages.
Yeah.
Wow.
Yeah, I wanted to make everything a step-by-step process so that if there was any question, you could look back, you could understand the culture, understand how it relates to how you do things in the practice. And so we had everyone read it, everyone sign it, had a meeting about it, everyone was on the same page, they all agreed with what was in it. So, and we even had some staff input into it, so I made a few edits in regards to that.
Yeah, that's fantastic. And on the patient side, do you feel that, despite some of these changes, it sounds like a lot of them were for the better, right? With branding and with different things, maybe started bringing in, new ideas, new treatment, modalities of care, whatever that may be. How did the patients respond? Did you do anything special in terms of management for kind of communicating this new message, this new ownership to the patients? What did that look like?
Yeah. My big thing was just to make it patient-centric. That was my big thing with the practice. And so I wanted to make patients feel welcome. I wanted them to come back, even if they didn't really need anything, just to talk to me, just to have that welcome feeling. I felt that was really important. And so we made it more personal. And I wrote a lot of personal notes to patients, sent them by mail, a lot of thank you cards, dropped contact lenses off to local patients' houses, just to help out, just to be involved in the community.
Yeah. Was there anything in particular you did in terms of marketing the practice once you took it over? As a new graduate, I'm sure that you might have had a different kind of idea as to where you might want to spend your time marketing. I don't know, maybe the previous owner might have been doing things, we're using different types of marketing channels, whether that's the yellow pages, the white pages, or whatever that may be, mailers. I mean, what does your marketing strategy look like?
Yeah, so marketing strategy for the original owner was actually, the Yellow Pages and then just community involvement in different organizations. And so what we did was we switched it over, really got into Facebook advertising, Instagram advertising, so a lot of social media, got a Google AdWords account started, so just a lot of online presence. Got rid of the Yellow Pages because no one was looking at the Yellow Pages.
Where do you think your biggest ROI has been in terms of your marketing strategy? Where are you seeing the biggest bang for your buck?
The biggest bang for the buck, it's still word of mouth, and I think that's how it always is going to be for optometry. I mean, we're just it's such a patient-centric industry that we're in.
Yeah. Is there anything that you would have done differently, thinking back to when you took over the practice, right? Initially, that you might have changed now that you've kind of been at it for a little bit?
Yeah, definitely going in, I had an idea of what I wanted to do, but I didn't have a solid game plan. I didn't have a step-by-step way of doing things. And if I had more of a solid game plan, I think I would have been more efficient at getting these changes in. There was a lot of mistakes made, but I mean, obviously that's good because you learn from them, but there's a lot of little things we could have avoided if I just had stuck to a plan.
And I know you're obviously involved in things outside of just seeing patients, right? We were talking about that a little bit earlier. Was any of that driven by for those that don't know, those that are watching this that don't know, you obviously went on to start a group, right, dedicated to finance, ODs on Finance with Dr. Bowie, right? And is there anything particular that you took from maybe this experience that kind of drove you to that, or things that you're doing, lessons that you're taking from there and implementing in this, and maybe what are some of those top tips that you might want to just leave those viewers with who are watching?
Oh yeah, definitely. So ODs on Finance started when Dad and I were having a beer, and we're like, hey, a lot of people don't know about finance in the optometry community. It's not something we're taught about. It's not something that's stressed at all. And really, the fact that we don't know much about it in the optometry community could be our downfall. And so what we wanted was just an open forum for education, for people to learn more about finance. And that was something that, as I was going through the early stages of private practice, I was realizing, hey, if I had this knowledge base, this would have been so much easier. And really the main thing I would give people is, if you're interested in private practice, if you're interested in owning, really research it, make sure it's what you want to do, work at different practices, see what niche you want to go into, and look at the numbers. That's a big thing too. We always talk about patients, we always talk about, the actual practicing of optometry, which is very important. It's the lifeblood of what we do, but looking at those numbers, that's what keeps you afloat. That's what keeps our profession afloat. So,
well, thank you for your time, as always. And, for those watching, you can check them out, ODs on Finance, directly on Facebook.
Yeah, directly on
as
Facebook.
well online. Is it odsonfinance.com?
odsonfinance.com.
There you go. Check it out. It's a great resource, very valuable, very helpful. You guys are doing a great service for the profession.
So are you guys.